In a world where legends rise and fall with every punch, where the roar of the crowd fades, but the stories live on. This is where those stories are told. This is Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. From the blood, the sweat, and the glory, to the controversies, comebacks, and knockouts, we go behind the ring, no fluff, no hype, and definitely no BS. Just the truth behind the fight game. And we've been doing it for over 2 decades. A podcast pioneer, now a Hall of Famer.
Great. What's that ego gonna be like?
And next, the comeback kid.
Wait, isn't he like 90 or something?
Shut up, he'll hear you. The reigning, defending, undisputed, heavyweight champion of boxing broadcasting. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. And it's on now.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. You can get yourself a copy of this book right now while you're watching or listening to this very show. Just visit Amazon or, hey, just check out our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and you can order it directly from there as well. And today's show is being brought to us in part by Classic Boats. Hey, listen, if you're looking to get a handmade, top-notch wooden classic or a brand-new Lavelli, check out classicboats.co. You won't regret it. Hey, we got a busy show for you today. I'm going to be talking, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the official announcement of Oleksandr Usyk and his next fight, which is, it's kind of comical. I got to update you on a couple of lawsuits that have taken place. We got the latest boxing news and more. We got a great guest. I've been telling you he's been coming on. He's a boxing historian, a writer, boxing Hall of Famer, and the author of this book, When in Doubt, Stop the Bout, among some other books I've talked about on this show a lot. My man Mike Silver is going to be joining us a little bit later. I'm also going to be breaking down and predicting the fight that's taking place this weekend, the first Zuffa Boxing World Title fight. It's in the Cruiserweight division. Jai Opetaia going up against Brandon Glanton. And that fight scheduled for this week, but this weekend, Sunday. I'll get into that a little bit later. But first, I got some fight results to talk about in a really good fight. If you missed it, you should really check it out. Because it was a unification fight, and it featured 2 super featherweight champions, Emmanuel Navarrete, and he took on Sugar Nunez, Eduardo Nunez, and it was a good fight. You know, I mean, here's the thing. You know, Nunez is no slouch. He's a little power-packed fighter. But he was taking on Navarrete, who's, in my opinion, and I broke down the fight, and I actually picked Navarrete. It was a tough pick, but as it turned out, it wasn't that tough of a fight for Navarrete. I will tell you this. I thought Nunez did hurt him a couple of times with the body attack. It was pretty obvious, and he just didn't go for that. I thought that his corner was a little too brave. He got within one round, his whole eye was almost completely shut. The doctor looked at it, gave it the okay. But you know, if I'm the corner, you got to show some compassion for your fighters. I mean, he's not going to stop it. The friggin' doctor didn't stop it. You know, it's up to the corner. I mean, you know, as a fighter, you got to rely on your corner. I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez was doing one of the broadcasts And the camera from the broadcast I watched it on kept showing him. He was flipping out at the corner. But nonetheless, Navarrete gets the win. It was they stopped it after the 10th round finally, because thank God the doctor finally said no mas. At the end of the day, we have Navarrete, 40 wins, 2 losses, and a draw, with 33 of his wins coming by knockout. He's now the WBO and IBF super featherweight champion. And Nunez drops only the second fight in his career. He's now 29-2 with 27 knockouts. And I totally expect him to be back. There's no question about that. This past weekend, I went up to the Turning Stone up in Verona, New York, and covered some fights there that I wanted to talk about. First and foremost, excellent card. Okay, I got to be honest. First of all, I go to all the Turning Stone events because really, there's, in my opinion, there's no place like watching a fight at the Turning Stone Casino because of its size. You know, no matter where you sit, you got a great seat, and the crowd is always vocal, which is good. And plus the casino and the food and all that stuff. So you can understand why I go there. But the truth of the matter is when I was dissecting this card, and I even picked it here, I thought the co-main event and the main event weren't going to be competitive fights at all. And I actually, when I got there, I was looking at the bout sheets, and I'm like, they're probably not going to be. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, this card was excellent from top to bottom. In the main event, which I picked wrong. It was a regional it was a international WBO featherweight title. Normally I don't even mention that, but okay, every fight's a title fight these days. Elijah Pierce went in as the champion, and I thought he was going to blow away Lorenzo Parra, and the reason I thought that was going to happen was because Parra's record and his level of opposition that he fought wasn't all that good. And as a matter of fact, the one loss and one draw he had were the only 2 fights that he had against winning record opponents. Pierce came in this fight pretty cocky. Was pulling some weigh-in antics and everything else. And then we later find out that Lorenzo Parra's father had just died. What was the end result? Parra knocks out Pierce at 1 minute and 44 seconds of the second round. It was so exciting. I know it was only 2 rounds, but it was so exciting to see that. Only because, I always have a thing for the underdog. Always, even when I pick against them, I'm always rooting for the underdog, and it was a really enjoyable fight. And then the co-main event, which wasn't supposed to go that long as well. Bryce Mills. Now, Bryce Mills is a young fighter. He's in the junior welterweight division. He's a young local fighter up near the Turning Stone. He's out of Liverpool, New York. He hangs out with 4 guys in a band. No, different Liverpool. But anyway, he always draws a big crowd, and he's always exciting. And I've been critical about him, who he's been fighting and everything else. But let me tell you, it was really great, and I was glad I was ringside to see him capture his first title, which was the WBC silver title in the super lightweight division. He improves to 21 wins, 1 loss, with 8 of his wins coming by knockout, because Tobias Green was stopped at 1 minute and 23 seconds of the 4th round. It was pretty action-packed. Here's the thing with Bryce. And, he's calling out some top fighters now. And now that he's got this belt, he's obviously going to be able to, get some bigger fights. and he's calling out some big fighters, and we'll see how he goes. But let me tell you, his style is very crowd pleasing. He's an all action fighter. He's in phenomenal shape. If you look at this kid, especially I'm watching him ringside, and he's weighing in at 140 pounds. It just 140 pounds. I mean, if you see this guy, he looks like a light heavyweight. He's chiseled. He never seems to get tired. The only thing there's something going on with his power. I mean, when you hear him throw punches, they thud, right? And he normally his opponents don't go anywhere, but his last couple of fights were good. I want to just jump real quick into the chat room. Give a shout out to the guys in there. They're talking about Rico as a famous kickboxer. Today I'm going to be talking about the fight Usyk and the guy we're talking about, Rico Van Hooven. It's not. Come on. I mean, you could say what you want. I know he's a great kickboxer, but it shouldn't be happening. We'll get to that a little later. Back to Turning Stone. And then there were some other fights as well. Kermel Motan, who's he's a young kid. He's now 9-0. He stopped his opponent right at the end of the second round, Wilfredo Flores, who drops to 12-7-1. Kermel improved to 9-0 with 7 knockouts. He's out of Las Vegas. He's got some potential. He's a little cocky for a young fighter. I'd like to see him just curb that a little bit. He's in great shape. He's 19 years old. Keep an eye out for him. And Rodrigo Mascara, he won a unanimous decision, 4-round decision over Cahill Sanders to improve to 5-0 with a couple of knockouts. And Sanders drops to 1-2 with one of his wins coming by knockout. In a fight that it only lasted 1 round, but here's another guy to keep an eye on. He's in the super welterweight division, junior middleweight, and he looked like a monster too. Out of Quebec, Canada, Brandon Pollard. He's now 3-0 with 3 knockouts. He destroyed Charles Scott at 2 minutes and 40 seconds of the first round. And this kid, he looks promising, so keep an eye out for him. And the show started off with 3 female fights. The first one, Katrina Scalzo, making her pro debut, a local fighter, taking on Michelle Cook, who's an experienced female fighter in the super lightweight division. It ended up being a split decision draw in that one. In the super flyweight division, Damiana Andrillo took a unanimous decision over Jessica Radke in another very entertaining fight. All 3 of these female fights were extremely entertaining. And in the main female fight for an NABF super flyweight title, the flying Hawaiian Shira McPatricio won a unanimous decision over Maribel Ramirez to improve to 8-0 with 3 of her wins coming by knockout. And Ramirez drops to 15-14-4. Pretty good veteran fighter. So all in all, this fight was also promoted by Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao Promotions, that is. All in all, what a great card. The next one I think they're having will be Hall of Fame weekend. So you're going to want to show up for that for sure. I know I'm going to be there. All right, here we go. Give a shout out to Coach who just popped in. Microphone Productions is in there. Says easy fight for Usyk. It's all about the money. Look, let's talk about that. Oleksandr Usyk going up against Rico Verhoeven. And look, here's the thing. I'm not happy with the fight at all, okay? I don't think it should be taking place, number one. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Usyk, and this is what's bothering me. Okay, boys and girls, this is what's bothering me. I give Usyk a lot of credit. I don't really. Heavyweights aren't supposed to be rated pound for pound, right? They're not supposed to be in the pound for pound ratings. The pound for pound ratings were considered for every other weight class because the heavyweight division is supposed to be the division, right? So, but in his case, and it was the same with Evander Holyfield, these guys fought in multiple weight classes, so you kind of got to give them a pass. And with that said, Usyk is a pound for pound fighter. He's done things that I didn't think he could do, to be honest. He's such a brilliant fighter. He's deceivingly powerful, accurate, good defense. I mean, he does it all. And one of the most impressive parts of Usyk, in my opinion, is that he challenges himself. He fights big fights, fights that you say to yourself, he's not going to win. I said to myself, hey, Billy, see, he's not going to win. And then I said back to myself, what are you, nuts? Of course he's going to win. But the truth of the matter is that he's proved it in the ring. And I think that his legacy, which he will have, listen, I'm not putting him as an all-time top number one or even top 10 right now. I mean, people are anointing him as the greatest. Let's not get crazy. You always got to wait for a fighter's career to end and, let it dissect it a little bit. Let it sink in a couple of years after they're retired so you can give them the credit where credit's due, or kind of eliminate when over credit's being delivered. I don't know. But in any event, I've always respected him for challenging himself. Rico Verhoeven is a champion kickboxer, and I'm not going to take anything away from him. I mean, as a kickboxer, he's 66 wins and 10 losses. I mean, he's no spring chicken at 36. He's been in a lot of top-notch kickboxing tournaments who's won, but he's not a boxer. All right. And Usyk has so many other options right now. Look, I was critical when the rumor was that he was going to fight Deontay Wilder. All right. I like the fact that Deontay is fighting Derek Chisora because the winner of that fight obviously is going to get a shot at Usyk. Now, is this a stay busy fight? Is Usyk just deciding, well, let me get the winner of the Chisora Wilder fight for another easy win because he beats either one of those two. In the meantime, let me get a stay busy fight. Well, you know what? There's other fights too. Tyson Fury is trying to hunt him down for another fight. But the guy that I think that should be fighting him, and he should be fighting him now because Usyk is only going to fight 2 more times, is that, and that's KBL. KBL deserves the fight. This guy, in my opinion, is, aside from Usyk, is the next best heavyweight out there. And, it's, to me, Usyk is blatantly ducking him. And I really don't think that this fight, first of all, the WBC approved it. That's even worse. My question is to you, what do you think? What do you think of this fight? Are you okay with it? Are we giving Usyk a pass? I hear people, I see posts on social media, oh, it's just a money grab. You got to give him credit. What are you talking about? You don't think he's been making money? Yeah, it's a money grab. The point is when people and your own team are anointing you as one of the all-time greats already, when your career's not even over, and then your next fight is against a kickboxer. I mean, that's almost as bad as, let's say, Mayweather fighting a 60-year-old Mike Tyson. Oh, wait a minute. That is happening, isn't it? Oh, okay. But anyway, I'm against the fight. And I think that Usyk is ripping the fans off. I really do. I think he's ripping the fans off. And I don't think that the how let me ask you this. How does the WBC even sleep at night approving this fight? Look, all the sanctioning bodies and we're going to be talking to Mike Silva because I'm going to be talking to him about that too. But all the sanctioning bodies are in a panic. All right, they're in a panic. Mean, bad, old, evil Dana White and Zuffa Boxing is threatening, their cash cows. I'm going to say cows because all the fighters, right? And all the different sanctioning bodies. And then they spit out this. they approve this fight. I mean, it's comical. If I didn't know that it was true, I would be thinking that this was like, an April Fool's joke on March 4th. I'm not crazy about in case you haven't noticed, I'm not crazy about the fight. Very disappointed that Usyk is taking this fight. Even more disappointed that the WBC, who most people regard as the most valuable of the four major sanctioning bodies, how they can approve it. Look, it goes back to when Mayweather, okay, when the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and I'll never forget it, Triple G wanted to fight Jaime Munguia. Munguia at the time was 25-0, and the Nevada State Athletic Commission said, "Yeah, sorry, Triple G, you can't fight him because he's not experienced enough to fight you," because Triple G at that time was, 25-0. And we all know he's regarded as a knockout puncher, and he had a pretty good run there. But then the Nevada State Athletic Commission turns around and approves Floyd Mayweather against Conor McGregor. And Conor McGregor, forget about his successful MMA career. He wasn't a boxer, and they approved that. They approved that fight. So the WBC is doing something very similar. Very similar. Well, Usyk says his quote after it was officially announced is, "I truly respect people who reach the very top of the sport. Rico's one of those guys. He's a powerful athlete. He's a great champion. He's truly the king of kickboxing. Being a champion isn't just about belts. I'm ready and looking forward to a meeting. I'm looking forward to meeting him in the ring. It's going to be a unique experience for both of us. A big night is coming." That's a pretty, neutral statement, if you ask me. He's a world champion. He's a world heavyweight boxing world champion. At the very least, he should be fighting a boxer. Now, Rico, in his defense, this is a great opportunity for him. I don't blame him. He's great. Talk about a money grab. He's going to get all the publicity. No pressure on him. And he said, "I spent 12 years as the undisputed heavyweight kickboxing champion, and I accomplished everything I set out to do. But staying at the top for that long didn't take away from hunger. It strengthened it. Usyk's the undisputed in boxing. That's the kind of challenge that motivates me. Undisputed versus undisputed, the best versus the best." Hey, you know what? Why doesn't the winner of that fight take on the undisputed WWE heavyweight champion, and then the winner of that fight could take on the undisputed UFC champion? Who knows? Who knows? And who gets left out of all of this? KBL. And KBL, to me, is the best heavyweight aside from Usyk out there. But anyway, we got a comment in the chat room. Microphone Production says Mayweather fought every champion in different divisions in his era. Pacquiao is the only one I think he didn't fight in his prime. No, that's not true, and I'm sure Coach can name him. The fight that sticks out the most for me, Microphone Productions, is when he chose Baldomir, which was the weakest welterweight champ at the time. After he turned into Money Mayweather, he became, very cherry-picking, cautious fighter. Prior to that, when he was with Top Rank, he was in some exciting fights. The funny thing is you think of, fighters that were exciting and immediately fights pop in your head. I mean, you mentioned Tommy Hearns or Marvin Hagler, and their fight pops in my head. You mentioned Roberto Duran. I think the Kenny Buchanan fight pops in my head first, but I mean, there's so many. You mentioned Floyd Mayweather, and you're like, what exciting fight. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. But in any event, hey, remember when Conor Benn, he was being criticized, for signing with Zuffa Boxing, and he kind of felt bad. Matchroom comes out later and says that he turned down all these title fights and all of this. It's been reported that Conor Benn signed a one-fight deal with Zuffa Boxing, one fight, for $15 million. Now, at the end of the day, we talk about the belts, and you hear, some people involved in the sport that are telling you how good the belts are for the sport, and that they can get fighters more money, et cetera, gives more fighters the opportunity to be a champ. But what's happening is that there's so many titles, and it's diluted so bad that it's becoming a money thing. So fighters are willing to fight tougher fights for more money, right? Otherwise, if they're fighting for a belt, they want to cherry pick. And it's been accepted by a lot of fans, I think the Zuffa Boxing is going to change that. And I think the Conor Benn signing is indicative of that. Conor Benn, and I happen to like Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. I know that there's some, feuding going on. But I like Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. I think they've done a lot for the sport. And I think this speaks volumes that, Conor Benn is taking the big payday, and it was announced that he's fighting Regis Prograis, excuse me, who's a good opponent. He's a very good opponent. But I'll tell you something. I think that this fight is closer than people are going to think. He's fighting on the Tyson Fury undercard, and Prograis. I've seen him fight live twice, and he's a good fighter. He's got something to prove. People are acting like he's washed up. Ben, he's 24-1. He's hot right now because of the Eubank win. But Prograis is 30 wins and 3 losses, with 24 of his wins coming by knockout. Now, most of his success was at lighter weights, but it's going to be interesting to see how Conor Benn performs, because the word on the curb is that Matchroom was really protecting him, and with the exception of the Eubank fight, which they both made a ton of money, between 2 fights. I think it's going to show, show you that, hey, we'll fight the better fights for more money. So what's the problem? If the promoters want to actually try to compete with Zuffa, they're going to have to put on these fights. They're going to have to put on competitive fights, and they're going to have to pay the fighters accordingly. Like Dana White said last week, he was laughing, joking about it, that, these promoters aren't even putting up a fight, that, it's like stealing candy from a baby. I'm changing the analogy he used, but, the whole point is that, this is the opportunity, for promoters, the Matchrooms and the Golden Boys, Queensberry, all the ones fighting with them now. Now's the time for them to put on some competitive fights. If it's going to cost them more money, so be it. We got a good fight coming up with the monster David Benavidez challenging Gilberto Ramirez for his cruiserweight title. I'm really looking forward to that fight. But here's the problem. First of all, it's a PBC fight, and you know what that means, that you're going to pay for it extra. And this is one of those deals where it's on, I believe, Amazon Prime, but you got to pay. So even if you're a Prime holder, which has been the benefit in the past where a lot of people tuned into the fight, you still got to pay. So now for somebody that doesn't have Prime, not only do they have to subscribe to that, then they got to pay. I think that's a mistake. I think the greed factor with Al Heyman and the PBC is also on display here. So when you're looking at these promoters and you see what they're doing, and you look over at Dana White's model, and you see what he's potentially doing, I agree they're not putting up much of a struggle. You know, I mean, even the big names, they're still fighting, fights that they should be able to win. They're not competitive fights. Okay, we'll be talking about the fight that's this week, and that's my biggest hang-up. Right now, I only have one problem with Dana White's Zuffa Boxing. Only one so far. And that is that he airs on Sundays, and he airs on Sunday nights. I think that's a mistake. I get it. He's airing his UFC model on Saturday nights. If I were him, I would consider shifting the boxing to Friday nights if he can cut that deal with Paramount. Get Friday night fights. I think that they would do better viewership. I think that to have it on a Sunday night, especially if you're not going to see the main event till 11, 12 o'clock at night, Sunday night, last day of the weekend, people getting ready to go to work on Monday. I don't think it's going to do well. The people may watch it on a replay, but I don't know. Dana, I know you know it because you've done it and you're successful. But you know what? I think you should rethink that one. I'm sure they have all kinds of metrics to go through that and everything else. So, but it's going to be interesting to see. That's for sure. Hey, listen, I've been talking about this cat for a long time, and I'm always referring to one of his books, The Art of Boxing, The Rise and Fall of the Sweet Science. But he's got a new one out right now, and I've been talking about that. When in doubt, stop the bout. Joining us right now is a boxing historian. Let me get all this stuff right from my man, the boxing historian. He's a boxing writer. He's a boxing Hall of Famer, and he's my friend. Mike Silver joins me. What's up, brother?
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Bill.
I probably forgot a few things, but
that's all right.
Hey, when in doubt, stop the bout.
Right.
It's a good book. Tell us about it. I got some questions about it, but go ahead. Tell us about the book.
Well, been watching boxing for well over 50 years. And, if you watch boxing long enough, keep watching it, you can't help but become a critic. And especially with what's been happening with the sport, it's so fragmented now. I mean, what kind of sport has over 100 world champions? We used to have 8, not more than 10 weight divisions. Now it's grown to 18.
Yeah.
I mean, I decided, and I had seen a lot of things that I didn't like. Again, when my perspective and frame of reference goes back to the late 1950s. And as a kid, I began watching boxing and took boxing lessons, actually had a few amateur fights, trained at Stillman's gym, was influenced by people, old-timers who knew the sport inside out, lived the sport 24 hours. So I picked up a lot of things that, it's rare to come across it today. And I began to be alarmed at what I was seeing, especially in the last 10 or 15 years or so, which not just that the overall skill level of fighters had been sort of downgraded. There's reasons for that. And a lot of it is in my first book, The Arc of Boxing, which the subtitle is The Rise and Decline of the Sweet Science. And what I began to see was a lot of boxers already fighting 12-round fights, so-called, quote, title fights. It could be, for the interim title, the gold title, the diamond title. I don't know. There's so many, I can't even think of them. But these were 12-round fights where you had professional fighters, some of them have good amateur records, coming in, and they're 8, 10, 12 fighters, so they're fighting for a so-called title, 12 rounds. And I noticed a lot of them weren't what we used to call seasoned fighters, where as the bout wore on, they were taking too much punishment. They were getting hit unnecessarily with punches they shouldn't have gotten hit with. And that was a combination of two things: their training and the fact that nobody seemed to care. The fact that a lot of the commissions were basically kowtowed to whatever the sanctioning organizations wanted. And I saw referees who seemed to me, stopping fights too late. And this all was building up in my mind. And I said, a lot of this is unnecessary. We know boxing is a dangerous sport. It's a sport where you hit each other in the head.
You try to knock them out even.
Yeah, right. And what's another word from a knockout? Concussion. Yeah. So that's the name of the game. So in that type of scenario, if you want to continue this sport, you have to be very careful, and you have to conduct it intelligently and try and mitigate the abuse, the negligence, and the incompetence, which I saw rampant within the sport, especially in the last 15 years. So what I did was I started studying some statistics just to see, back up what I thought needed to be done with statistics. So one of the first, I looked at over 137 deaths. I took 10 deaths from each decade, from the 1920s to the second decade of the 21st century. And I mixed it up. Some were preliminary fights, some were main events, so on. And there were 137 fights. I looked at all of them. I studied them. And I found out, and there's a wonderful resource called the Manuel Velasquez Boxing Death Index. I mean, it's quite a title, but he documents in incredible detail every boxing death since like 1790. And a lot of those deaths, he has details, newspaper accounts, which was very helpful to understanding what happened. But I didn't only need the newspaper accounts. I saw fights where a fighter had lost 4 of his last 5 fights, last 2 by knockouts. What was he doing in the ring, 6 weeks later, fighting in another main event? So I looked at these 137 fights. I looked at them very carefully, newspaper accounts, what happened. A number of them were available on YouTube videos. And what I found out was that over 60% of these fights, and I was being very generous where I didn't know the core, it's just the cause was boxing. I couldn't really pinpoint an abuse. I found that 60% of those deaths were avoidable, absolutely avoidable, because there were several reasons. One, either the referee was incompetent, and that includes the ringside physicians and the commission that approved a fight and let it continue. These fights went on too long. The fighter was in obvious distress, and the fight was not being stopped. And even some of the fights went the distance after the fighter had taken, and he collapsed and died in the ring. So 60% of those 130 deaths fell under that category, okay? Where if different things had been protocols, and mostly just involving common sense, okay?
What was out of those fights? I don't mean to interrupt you, Mike, but out of those fights, what was the timeline? And how many years was that many deaths?
Well, again, there were 1,600 deaths from 1921. I have to look at the book for the exact number, or 16 or 1,700 boxing deaths from 1921 to when I finished the stats. That was about late 2023. So we're talking about 100 years. Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
that's still a lot of deaths.
yes, of course.
Yeah.
Boxing was averaging about, well, again, that took into account amateur boxing and professional boxing, but I focused just on the professional deaths. Okay. That was what I was focusing on. And again, the deaths that could have been avoided were a combination of mismatches, incompetent refereeing, abuse of the fighter. That is, he had a losing record, had been previously knocked out, and was fighting too soon. Various reasons, and other stats that I came up with was that 70% of the deaths in boxing, and this was taken. The 70% was statistics from 1980, the last 83, last 30 years, 83. Wait a minute. Okay. Almost 40 years. Yes. 40 years. The last 40 years. Because I wanted to be more, current right up to the present, but beginning in the 1980s, when supposedly, we were more concerned about injuries and so on. And I found that over 70% of the professional boxing deaths occurred after the fifth round. So I looked at as some sort of milestone in terms of danger to the boxers. And again, today we have many fighters with only 10, 12, 15 fights, fighting 12-round fights when they shouldn't be. So that was a significant stat to me. And the other was that over 60%, almost 2/3 of the ring deaths, professional ring deaths from 1983 to the present, or really also the book came out in August, so I counted up additional tragedies right up to the middle of 2025, and I found that 2/3 of those deaths took place in the flyweight to lightweight division. Most of the deaths took place in the lighter weight divisions. Now, there's several
sustained beatings.
Yes. I mean, the more punches are exchanged, the fighters get hit much more often. And a lot of them also, another aspect is weight cutting. You will find more weight cutting in the lighter weights, which is a very dangerous thing to do. And I think what added to the danger of boxing is it was supposed to be a safety measure, but having the weigh-in 24 or 36 hours before the actual fight, giving the fighter a chance to rehydrate, because some of them have trouble making weight. They want to fight at a lighter weight, so they starve themselves and then rehydrate later. That's dangerous. Fighters should all be fighting as close as possible to their natural weight. That's a safety precaution.
No, I agree. Actually, I have questions that some of the people in the chat room, and one of them from Coach was, what your thoughts were on same-day weigh-ins, and you basically just told us.
Yes, absolutely. We should go back to
I agree with that. Yeah.
Same-day weigh-ins. And another stat that's important is that the majority of deaths in boxing take place in the last scheduled round of the fight. Now, that could be round 4, 6, 8, 10, or 12. But more deaths take place in the last scheduled round. And I tried to think, why is that?
Yeah, why?
Well, because the referee and the doctor, and the doctors are almost bystanders in this. They hardly ever get involved, really. But the referees usually don't like to stop a close fight or in the last round. It's coming to a close. They want to give the fighter a chance, maybe he'll make it to the end. It's the last round. He's already he was knocked down once. He's trying, he's holding on. Let him last until and also the fighters are told, in the corners, they're told, this is it. It's the last round. Give it everything you've got. Go out there, no matter what kind of condition the fighter is in. So, they throw caution to the winds, and that combination creates a situation where a third of all the deaths, 1/3, take place in the last scheduled round of a fight. So I try to put all these stats together, and I said, okay, we can never it's impossible. You can't make boxing completely safe. It's impossible. Unless you eliminate punches to the head, and that ends the sport, okay?
Forget it, yeah.
Right. So I thought, okay, one of the first things I focused was that 5-round distance where most of the fighters suffered injuries, fatal injuries after the 5th round. And I said, the way to adjust the current situation where many of these inexperienced fighters are fighting even 8-round fights they shouldn't be in, at 10, 12, certainly not, that no fight should go beyond 5 rounds. 2 things. 1, the fighter has to accumulate a minimum of 50 rounds of boxing before he's allowed to go beyond the 5th round. I should have shut off the ringer here. Hold on, I'm sorry.
That sounded like mine. I was like, where's my phone?
What is this? There you go. Well, okay.
So I know in the book you talked a lot about the shorter fights, being an idea. My question about that is another thing that you've mentioned about fighters just simply not being as good and being rushed into these longer fights. The style of fights, the style of fighters today, Mike, has changed. They fight very cautiously for longer periods of time. If fights were limited, do you think that would change, or do you think they would just be the same as they are now and just have even more bizarre endings?
My question to you is, maybe you're watching. I tell you the truth, you're watching probably more fights than I have, but I don't see fighters fighting cautiously at all. I don't see that. I see them.
Are you watching?
Very aggressive. I see the style is very aggressive today.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I don't see that. I mean, I see they're trying to establish dominance very early. They go after each other, going for the knockout. A lot of their punches are thrown with the intention of knocking out the opponent. I don't see, unless you compare, I don't see the fighters fighting cautiously, certainly not the way they used to.
Well,
you don't see, in the old days, you take 1 or 2 rounds to feel out the fighter and move. And that was, experienced fighters used to do that, even preliminary fighters. I don't see that today. I see an aggressive form of fighting because defense is not really taught properly.
No, but what if you watch? Okay, if you watch the norm, the majority of the fights that are mismatches, because I know you talk about that. The mismatches, and then if you got this guy, let's say fighter A, who's been handed mismatch fights, for 25 fights, and he knows that he's in there with somebody he should take out, and he's real aggressive. But when you see 2 fighters, when they finally do fight, where 2 fighters are supposed to be evenly skilled, they do fight a little more cautious. Well, they're afraid of each other.
Well, again, yes, you're talking about, look, you're not talking preliminary fighters. You're talking experienced fighters who realize they're fighting somebody of great, skilled opponent. Yes, and those are fights that are going to be 10 rounds, 8, 10, 12 rounds. These are more experienced fighters. And when I say 5-round fights, I'm talking about fighters who are not ready yet to go into the 10 or 12 round fights.
But didn't you say that you thought that you even reference, years ago, world title fights were 10-round fights, and you thought that would work today. So I could see having 5-round fights for young fighters, and then you limiting it. A lot of people, the argument's always been bring back the 15-rounder, and you're against that. No. You feel it should be less, right?
Of course. The fight should be scheduled today, the way boxing is today. I'm trying to adjust the sport to keep the drama, but make it safer, to mitigate some of the danger, okay? And no fight all title fights should be never more than 10 rounds. And we have the history of that. In my book, at one point, people don't know this, but in California, 10 round was the limit for title fights for 40 years until the 1940s. In Illinois, that's why the Dempsey-Tunney fights were 10 rounds, because in Philadelphia and Illinois, the limit for fights were 10 rounds. Henry Armstrong fought in 4 or 5 world title fights, limited to 10 rounds. The audience didn't complain, okay? I've seen miserably dull fights for 12 and 15 rounds, and I've seen very exciting fights for 4, 6, and 10 rounds. It doesn't matter. It depends on the fight.
Yep.
So, if people are serious about making the sport safer and not taking away the drama, then you have to eliminate the 12-round fights. And, if fighters know that they have 10 rounds to make their statement, they'll do it. They adjust the strategy and the style. I don't see anything wrong with it. It won't kill the sport. It didn't kill the sport in California or Illinois or Pennsylvania.
No, it could force the action.
Exactly. When fights are, when fighters are trying to win, they only have 4 or 5 rounds to establish, the win. Yes, the pace will be picked up. No question about it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of this has to do the safety aspects that you've touched on in the book has a lot to do with the lack of, really, for no other word to say it, and I don't mean this disrespectful to the fighters, but a lack of talent because of the lack of teachers. So a lot of these guys, they got rah-rah men in their corner, and the product, we see it. We see it. Do you think that it was, if today's rules, because that's a spiked question, but if today's rules applied in the 40s and 50s, do you think it would have been a safer sport?
What are today's rules? How do you describe today's
rules?
No,
I mean, like with, stopping fights in terms of, on cuts or really making them, they used to let them continue no matter what, the cautiousness, even though you're critical of that today, it was way worse years ago.
Oh, it was much worse. Oh, absolutely.
But those fighters were better. My point is, if they had the safety nets they have today, suspended after a knockout or a bad loss, the way the commissions are, they never did that back in the day.
No. You had fighters who were carried out on stretchers,
exactly,
and come back 6 weeks later to fight. They didn't know enough about brain injury, and they knew that there was a danger there, but they didn't know the extent of it. I mean, you see fights from the 30s, 40s. You can't believe that they're letting these fights go on. You can't believe that the fighter wasn't killed. If they, fights are not stopped, and fights are generally not stopped as quick as they should be today. They would have been let gone even further in back in the day. Right. But when you say with the rules of today, I mean, yes, lives would have been saved, no question. That certain fighters would not have been allowed to fight, certainly if they were carried out of the ring on a stretcher. Okay.
But my point was I thought it would be safer because the fighters were better. They knew how to dodge a punch. They know how to.
That's the only reason that even more fighters didn't die back then, because they knew how to stall, how to defend themselves. And that's why I say the fighters that died in way back when, that was also, most of them died because of abuse. They were mismatched. In fact, if the rules of today, where a fighter was knocked out, he's suspended, he must not fight for at least 60 days, right, that would have saved some lives.
Right.
And some of the tests we have now, yes. Yeah. And that's the whole reason. There's no excuse for what's happening now. For all we've learned, everything that we've learned over the past 20 years about CTE and brain injuries and so on, should make even more concern about adjusting the rules of engagement for the sport today to take into account the fact that the fighters are not taught proper defense, that they're coming into a 12-round fight with only 10 fights under their belt. It's a situation that can be changed if there's the will.
Mike, you had a.
But by the way, I just want to add, you say that, today we know much more. Last August, for the first time in boxing's modern history, first time since 1892, two fighters on the same card, professional card, in two separate bouts died. That has never happened. That to me was an indication that there's something is wrong. That two fighters on this, and the film that's taken off YouTube, but the films of both fights were available on YouTube. And it's just what I say in the book. All of those four fighters had less than most. I think one had 11 fights, one had 15. They all have very limited professional experience. And each of those fights, one was 8 rounds, went to a distance. The guy collapsed in the dressing room. The other one was knocked out in the last round, 10th to 12th round. And they were wars. There was no defense. They just were slugging away at each other. And if both of those fights, under the rules that I have in the book, considering their experience, would never have been scheduled for more than 5 or 6 rounds, tops. And if that had been the case, both those fighters would have survived.
Yeah, no, I agree with the lack of experience, but 100%. One interesting
and
point.
Also, where was the doctors, the people at ringside? The doctors have to take a more active role.
Yeah, well, they have to act in their role.
Right.
Right. Speaking of doctors, you make an interesting point. You said you feel that doctors should be required to interview fighters prior to the fight to get to know them. I love that because, sometimes some fighters, they can, talk about something they like and be very clear and blah, blah, blah. And you ask them those same questions. I mean, what was your basis on that?
Well, that was taken from the lecture that a wonderful neuropathologist actually, when this is from years ago, after a fighter named Willie Klassen was killed in New York, they asked a world-renowned neurologist and neuropathologist, MD, to look at the fight and make suggestions of how to make the sport safer. And I have a transcript of his lecture in the book. And he's the doctor, Dr. Derby. He is the doctor that created the rule of the walk to me rule. That is, after a fighter is knocked down, the referee takes a few steps back and motions the fighter, says, walk to me. And if the fighter staggers a little or doesn't in control of his body, then the fight is stopped automatically. That is his rule. He also suggested that the referee talk to the fighter before the fight, see how he answers questions, see, what his general level of how he communicates. And if during the fight, after a tough round, the referee speaks to him and he notices that the speech pattern is not there, he can determine, having talked to the fighter in the dressing room, that this is not the way the fighter naturally talks. Because, some people a little slow, they talk slow. So he gets an idea. And, that's, again, another bit of information that can only help you make a determination as to whether to stop the fight.
You feel the fighters should fight more in a calendar year. And, obviously, is one of the reasons because they'll get better?
No, we're not going to get back to that situation. Fighters now fight, usually the champions and contenders maybe fight twice a year, sometimes once a year, 3 times a year. You could say, oh, that's safer. Yeah, it is safer in that respect. But if again, it doesn't take much to cause brain damage if you're getting beaten, and that can happen in just one fight. If you don't know what you're doing, or you're taking too much punishment, or the fight isn't stopped, whereas an old timer could have 3 fights in a month or over 2 months and not sustain that same amount of punishment that the other fighter is taking in just one fight. So, it's not a question so much. Yeah, that's. But again, they aren't getting the experience. You're right. They aren't getting the experience that the old timers got, because the old timers, many of them, didn't fight 10 rounds until they had like 25 or 30 fights under their belt.
Right.
That was a process of apprenticeship and learning. That's gone today. That's gone. So again, all I'm doing is compensating for these facts and saying, okay, this is the way the sport is. A lot of it is the fights are very robotic slugfests. Under those circumstances, let's try and mitigate some of the danger. And
No, I was going to say, one of the things I always said, I promoted in several states, New York being one of them, and the brain scan requirement, and when I was involved with this study, and one of the things I said was, fighters should be required to get a brain scan before they're issued a boxing license, so that the doctors have a scan of their brain on record that they could always scan and use as a comparison. Because let's face it, a fighter gets a head scan. Some states don't require it, so he gets a scan after a knockout or a severe beating, and they're looking at a scan, and they would say within tolerance, But if this guy had a different type of scan that they could compare it, they could see if there was any damage or beginning to have damage. And the argument that I was always met with was the cost. Who pays for it? The fighter can't afford it. He's turning pro. And I always said, well, if a promoter signs a kid for 5-6 fights, he should lay out the money. What's your thoughts?
It's not the cost. It's really not the cost. And also, what you're saying is, it sounds very good. Yeah, they should get a baseline CT scan.
That's
baseline.
My point, yeah.
But it doesn't matter, because the damage that the fighter will eventually show years later will not show up on a CAT scan even 5 years into his career. It may not even show up when he retires. The CAT scan won't. It's not going to show it. I'll give you an example. Tex Cobb, Sports Illustrated, did an article on boxing safety years ago in the early 80s, and they CAT scanned Cobb's brain. And at the time, he was still an active fighter. I think he had already had the fight against Holmes, which he took a terrible. Every fight he was in, he took a lot of punches.
Yeah, he did.
And they did a CAT scan of Jerry Quarry's brain, who had been just retired, maybe a year before, had a terrible, last few years, took a lot of damage, and Ali's brain. And the follow CAT scan showed obvious brain damage in Quarry's brain and Muhammad Ali. That's it's a part of the inner brain that separates a bit because of dying brain cells. So there's a space there. I forgot the medical term, what it's called, but it takes time for some reason, not sure why, for the damage to show up. And there are better tools now. We've come up with better tools than the CAT scan. You do need a baseline CAT scan. Yes, I agree with that. But there are other psychological and verbal testing done that can determine if the fighter is beginning to deteriorate while he is active. This doesn't involve the CAT scan. I mentioned it in the book. These are psychoneuro tests that are non-invasive, that don't involve x-rays or even MRIs. Involve certain tests that the fighter takes, which are actually more accurate. And this is what should be done. And again, the commissions, they're very slow to do this. They say, well, let's have the CAT scan is important because later on you can see. In other words, in the middle of Ali's career, he probably a CAT scan, after the first Frazier fight wouldn't show anything, but 12 years later it's going to show.
Right. So
there are other tests that can be done that are actually more accurate, and they don't involve CAT scan.
My man in the chat.
And they're cheap, by the way. They're not expensive.
my man coach in the chat room wants to know what trainer Willie Groons taught you.
Who's there? Who said that question?
No, one of the guys in the chat room, my man coach. He always comes, no matter what guest it is. He always comes.
Coach must know me. Coach must know me because Willie Grunis was my trainer. Willie Grunis was an old school boxing trainer. He was an amateur fighter in the 20s. He turned pro in the 20s, and unfortunately, just before he was about to turn pro, he was in a car accident. He injured one eye, lost the sight in one eye, couldn't turn pro. But he had a very astute boxing mind, and he knew boxing as an art. His first major fighter was Maxie Shapiro, who went through 40 straight victories in a row, and he had Georgie Kochan. He had other fighters that were names in the late 40s. He had Jimmy Dupree. He trained Jimmy Dupree, and so Willie was a perfection. He taught me and about the art of boxing, and he was a perfectionist, and so yes, he had a very great impression on me. And he wasn't the guy that, he didn't have the personality of an Angelo Dundee or Ray Arcel. So, he wasn't the guy that was out there, very popular and good PR. He did his own thing. He was his own person, but he had a fantastic amount of knowledge about boxing. And there were other trainers like that nobody ever heard of.
Yeah. We don't have them anymore. That's the problem.
No, we don't. There are a few around that know their business, but you can count them on the fingers of one hand. Right. And the problem is, as Ray Arcel used to say, the gymnasiums, which were everywhere, were like universities because you could pick up so much information from other trainers. It was passed on, and even from the great fighters. You just watch them, the moves they made. Who can you learn from today? Very few. And so. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. We don't have the trainers we used to have. It all starts with the training.
No, I know. Well, it's not a trade. Boxing used to be a trade. It's not anymore,
No, it's more like a circus.
Yeah. It's becoming that. Hey, listen, the last time we talked on the phone, we started getting crazy about Dana White's stuff for boxing. And I gotta tell you, Mike, what was that, a couple months ago, right? I got to tell you, I like what I'm seeing. I think it's going to be good for the sport because you're going to see these guys. They're going to all jump ship, and as long as they get compensated, we'll see those entertaining fights against guys that are competitive with each other. What's your thoughts on what's been going on, since we talked?
Well, of course, it's hard to be optimistic when it comes to this sport because – the resume of boxing is not great. If you look, every time we think, things are going to change, then along comes, Don King, and along comes Suleiman, and all these crazy organizations with the belts and all the franchise champion, the interim champion. Every week can't keep track of it. So, and I say, yeah, I'm hoping that it will be a positive move for boxing. Right now, anything. I mean, right now, boxing is so fragmented that, and people are talking about a Manny Pacquiao-Floyd Mayweather fight. They're both about 50 years old. I mean, where have we gone to?
But it's even worse than that. It's Mayweather-Tyson. It's
Tyson and Jake Paul and Joshua.
Yeah, but now Usyk, a world champion, supposed to be a great fighter. He's taking on some kickboxer. It reminds me of the stunt Ali used to do back in the day after he was done fighting.
Well, it always has been about the money. It always will be about the money. And if there's money to be made, maybe the fight that Ali had against the wrestler, which was a co-feature, I think I saw when Chuck Wepner battled Andre the Giant. I mean, they had fights, but they didn't attract the same attention because I think it was a different boxing culture back then.
Well, I'll put it in perspective. All these things we're talking about and laughing about, the guys got paid a lot of money, but the last scene that has always made an impact, the last scene in Requiem of a Heavyweight where Anthony Quinn is being forced to be the wrestler dancing around in an Indian headset. It puts it in perspective. But anyway, where can they get the book, brother? Anywhere?
Well, okay, the book, When in Doubt, Stop the Bout, which I wanted a title which would say every.
It does.
When in Doubt, Stop the Bout. And the subtitle is A Revolutionary Approach to Boxing Safety and Reform. And
wait a minute. There's another little thing. Tell us about the picture on the book, the cover. Tell me how you got that picture.
Yeah. Well, when I was 16 years old and Willie was training me and I was and he had a fighter on the undercard at St. Nick's Arena. Imagine that, St. Nick's Arena. And he was fighting in a 6-rounder. And I had recently purchased a new camera. And I went to the fight to see his fighter and I said, I'll take some pictures, try out this new camera. And so I started taking photos, and I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not a great photographer. In fact, some of those pictures were a double exposure when after I developed the pictures, there was this one shot which I took almost by accident. I was sitting ringside, and just at the moment, a referee, a former great middleweight contender named Harry Ebbets, he was the referee. He stopped the fight and he threw up his hands, stepped in between the fighters. A classic scene of a referee stopping a fight. And when I developed it, I said, "Oh, what a great picture! This is the exact moment this referee is stopping the fight." The fighter was standing, and I put it in an album I have. And I said, I'm not getting rid of this picture. This is a hell of a picture. And then 3 years ago, when I decided to write this book and started the research, I remember the photo, and I hadn't come up with a title yet. And when I came up with the title, I said, "Oh my gosh, I took the perfect photo for the cover of this book." I couldn't believe it. So right away I thought, okay, definitely I had to write this book. And that photo, which is, I mention it, I write about it in the beginning of the book. It's the perfect photo for the book. So, and the artist said, "Mike, I can't," where the actual part where he's putting up his hands, he says, if you open the book, it's you see the whole scene there. So hold up the back of the book, if you may, just to show the picture, if they can see it. Yeah, that's the referee stepping in between. The picture is inside the book too. Yeah. And all my pictures in every book I write are chosen very carefully. I think you'll also enjoy about the 30 pictures in the book.
I don't want to bend it, but there's a whole photo from your view, from the chair.
The book is available on Amazon, and I would say to anybody, just before you pass judgment on the book, before you say you can't shorten the rounds, you can't do the standing 8 count, you can't, No,
wait a minute. Yeah, but they have to understand Mike Silver, because you explain all the reasons why it can. And I figure
like I'm in front of a jury. And I'm saying I got to convince people of what I'm saying.
I started agreeing with you when I read the book, and I was saying to myself, because we talked about it before I read the book, and I'm like, "Oh, come on, Mike, come on,"
I know.
I was.
That's the reaction.
After I read it, I was like, he makes some good points.
Yeah, it's like I got Russell Peltz mentioned. I put his comment on my Facebook. It's on the Facebook page or the book Amazon page for the book, where he said that he wasn't aware of the 4-round rule in California, which was for like 15 years, and the 6-round rule in Philadelphia and other cities. Philadelphia just had local commissions, city commissions. But he said, so again, every point I make in the book, I give the pros and the cons. Yeah. And this is not an all or nothing proposition I've written here. If just 2 or 3 of the 15 suggestions I make in the book to make the sport less dangerous, if only 2 or 3 of those suggestions are adopted, I believe the sport would become much safer, and it would lose none of its drama and the excitement that brings us to this sport. But we don't want people to be injured unnecessarily.
I think some of those changes would actually force excitement, and that's why I'm so high on the Zuffa boxing model.
Yeah, I'm hoping Zuffa Boxing does it. They have it within their power. They've got the backing, the money to do it. It's up to them. And I'm hoping that boxing will become less fragmented. There'll be better matchmaking.
Only 8 divisions. They're only doing 8 divisions.
Well,
right?
That's wonderful. They're going back to the 8 divisions. That's wonderful. That's
well,
all
they're actually getting rid of all the lower weight classes.
Good.
But they are adding the cruiserweight.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
No, I'm with you.
I'm fine with the cruiserweight. You can have up to 10, even 11 divisions if you want, but not more than that. That's it. And you have to have same-day weigh-ins. You must have same-day weigh-ins.
I like the same day because then a welterweight's walking around as a welterweight.
Exactly.
Mike, I appreciate you coming on, my man, and I hope you can come on again soon.
Thank you for having me, Bill. I appreciate it. It's great to talk to a real dyed-in-the-wool fan. And I just, again, give the book a chance, check it out, and see what you think.
I liked it. That's for sure.
Okay. Thank you, buddy.
Mike, I'll talk to you soon, my man.
You bet. Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
That's Mike Silver. You hear me talking about his books all the time, and trust me, like I said, I was honest. When Mike was telling me, we were talking one day before I read the book, and I'm saying to myself, I don't know, man. I was one of those guys. I'll admit, I was one of the guys that wanted the 15 rounds back. The book I wrote, the guys fought until they couldn't fight anymore. 20 rounds. But there's some great points made in the book, worth the read. Anyway, the judge granted. Let's talk about Saga for a minute. Golden Boy and Virgil Ortiz and the management team, they were all suing each other. Well, it was announced earlier this week that the judge granted Golden Boy's motion for arbitration, which means some big fights with Virgil Ortiz are on hold. So, and speaking of lawsuits, my man Mike mentioned Don King. Well, Don King he's jumping on the bandwagon too. Now he's suing Ring Magazine over the Michael Hunter over the Michael Hunter situation and the world title fight that he was supposed to have. And he's also suing the WBA. I guess it's in the air. Just sue everybody around you, right? Anyway, there's a good fight this weekend. Let's talk about that real quick. I'm going to give you my thoughts on we were talking about Zuffa boxing. Well, this happens to be for the first Zuffa boxing world title. It's a cruiserweight, and it's Jai Opetaia going up against Brandon Glanton. I'm sorry. And Jai Opetaia, in my opinion, is the best cruiserweight out there right now. A lot of people haven't heard of him because he's from the land down under. That's why, and we don't get to see him that much. But he's got a record of 29 wins, 23 coming by knockout, no losses. He's only 29 years old. The man stands at 6'2", 76-inch reach. He's 4 years younger than his opponent. We'll get to that in a minute. He's a southpaw. He's also the IBF World Cruiserweight Champion, which opens up a whole nother can of worms for this fight for the vacant Zuffa Cruiserweight title. Because he's the IBF World Cruiserweight Champion, he's not rated at all by any of the other sanctioning bodies. But the computer, ESPN, The Ring, and Billy C. Boxing all have him ranked at number 1. Some of his big fights, well, he beat Marius Briedis twice, both for world titles, a 12-round decision in 2022 and a 12-round decision in 2024. He's also got wins over Jordan Thompson, Ellis Zorro, and Jack Massey. And in his last fight in December of this past year, he got an 8-round knockout over then undefeated Hussein Chinkara. He's an exciting fighter. He does get hit. He has been down, but he has not lost. He steps in with Brandon Glanton. Now, Brandon Glanton's got a record of 21 wins, 3 losses with 18 of his wins coming by knockout. He's never been stopped with his 3 losses. He lost to Chris Billiam Smith in April of 2025 in a 12-round decision. He lost a 10-round majority decision to Soslan Azabramov in March of 2023, and he lost a 10-round split decision to David Light in December of 2022. He does have some pretty good wins. In January 2024, he stopped Emil Marek in the second round. Marek, going into the fight, was 35 wins with only 4 losses. June of 2024, he stopped a then 12-1 Oleksandr in the 11th round in what was a thriller. And then in October of 2025, he stopped Marcus Brown. Yeah, that Marcus Brown, who was 25-2 in the 6th round, and what I think was his best win as a pro. He's 34 years old, 4 years older than Jai Opetaia. He's an orthodox fighter, 2 inches shorter at 6 foot, but at 79-inch reach, he's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He's a power puncher. He comes forward, which should work in Jai Opetaia's favor. The computer ranks him at number 17. You know, looking at all the rankings for this guy was pretty strange because they were all over the place. The computer ranks him at number 15. The IBF has him at number 15. The WBC has him at number 8. The WBO has him at number 11. He's not rated by the WBA or ESPN. However, the Ring Magazine has him ranked at number 11, and he's number 9 on the IBO's top 100 computer system. How do I see this fight going? Well, I think Glanton's got a puncher's chance. He is a powerful puncher. He does come forward, and Jai Opetaia does get hit at times, and he has been down. However, if you've never seen Jai Opetaia fight, and considering he's really on the world stage, kicking off his upper boxing career and all these things, I think we're going to see a really good performance from Jai Opetaia. I see him winning this fight, and I think he's going to win it in dominating fashion. I'm picking Jai Opetaia to win this fight. Hey, listen, boys and girls, make sure you mark it on your calendar to tune in on Wednesdays because we've got some great guests coming up over the next few weeks. Next week, we got, remember Amelia Moore, a female fighter? She was on the show last year. Well, she's coming on again next week because she's fighting for a vacant NABF lightweight title real soon. So I can't wait to talk to her again. She's going to be coming on. And then in the weeks following that, we got Carl Weingarten. Mr. Weingarten has been doing a fantastic job. I don't know if you've seen some of his stuff on social media, but he's been taking some old films and digitizing them to where they look like, they happened yesterday. Great stuff, including old stuff like a Jack Johnson Burns fight. Tommy Burns, I think he did. Real good stuff. And my man, remember I told you there's 2 boxing referees that I think are the top 2 boxing referees in the sport of boxing. We had one of them on already, Harvey Dock, and then the other one, I talked him into coming on. My man Charlie Fitch is going to be joining us soon, and of course Bob Newman from Fight News. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up. So listen, make sure you tune in next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.